Good evening and welcome to Scotland at 7. My name is Brian Liddy and it is Wednesday the 29th of January. Here's a Ukraine update. Today is the 1071st day of the war in Ukraine. Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky has said Vladimir Putin was afraid of negotiations on ending the war after the Russian president ruled out direct talks with his Ukrainian counterpart. Today, Putin once again confirmed that he's afraid of negotiations, afraid of strong leaders, and does everything possible to prolong the war, Zelensky said. On Tuesday, Putin ruled out speaking directly with Zelensky, whom he called illegitimate. Ukraine has warned against it being excluded from any peace talks between Russia and the US, accusing Putin of wanting to manipulate Donald Trump, the US president. Ukrainian drones targeted oil and power facilities in western parts of Russia, officials and media outlets reported on Wednesday. Baza, a Russian social media channel, close to Russia's security services, reported that an oil refinery was on fire at Kustovo in the Nizhny Novgorod, east of Moscow. In the western region of Smolensk, which borders Belarus, there was a massive drone attack and air defence systems destroyed a drone threatening a nuclear power facility, according to Governor Vasily Anokin. Dozens more drones targeted the Bryansk region that borders Ukraine and the Tver region that borders the Moscow region to its south, regional governors said. Flights were halted for safety at the Kazan airport in the Republic of Tatarstan, 830 kilometres east of Moscow, officials said. The US transferred about 90 Patriot air defence interceptors from Israel to Poland this week to then deliver them to Ukraine, according to media reports. And President Zelensky said multiple humanitarian projects in Ukraine had suspended operations due to Donald Trump's freeze on foreign aid and that Kyiv would replace funding where possible. Donald Trump's Secretary of State, Marco Rubio, and the EU Foreign Policy Chief, Kaja Kallas, have discussed the Ukraine war in their first phone call since the Trump administration took office. An EU official, speaking on condition of anonymity, said they agreed on the necessity of maintaining maximum pressure on Moscow to move towards a just and sustainable peace in Ukraine. A row over arms procurement has erupted in Ukraine's government after the defence minister, Rustem Umerov, criticised the system as having failed to deliver results for frontline troops. Umerov sacked a deputy defence minister, Dmytro Klemenkov, and levelled criticism at the Defence Procurement Agency, which was set up to coordinate weapons purchases and is meant to guard against corruption. On Tuesday, the European Commission proposed further tariffs on additional farm imports from Russia and its ally Belarus. Currently, 15% of Russian farm goods are not affected by sweeping EU tariffs that came into force last July. The new tariffs would continue to spare Russian agricultural goods and fertiliser transiting to non-EU countries to ensure that food supplies for elsewhere, notably Africa and Asia, were not affected. In addition to denting Russia's war coffers, the Commission said the proposal aimed to reduce dependencies on imports from Russia and Belarus, particularly of fertilisers that make the EU vulnerable to potential coercive actions by Russia and thus present a risk to EU food security. And in the Middle East, the death toll in Gaza since Israel launched its operation now stands at 47,417, according to the Hamas-run Ministry of Health. 2 Palestinians were also killed by Israeli fire in the occupied West Bank overnight and into Wednesday, according to the ministry. 3 Israeli hostages set to be released on Thursday under the terms of the ceasefire deal have been named as Arbel Yehud, 29, Agam Berger, 19, and the man known as Gadi Moses, 80 years old. 5 Thai nationals will also be released, an Israeli official said, although their names have not been released. The US President Donald Trump's Middle East envoy, Steve Witkoff, is in Jerusalem and has met with Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. And Trump has announced plans to deport foreign nationals living or attending college in the US if they have taken part in the pro-Palestinian protests of recent years. A Turkish ship carrying 871 tons of humanitarian aid for Gaza docked at the Egyptian port city of El Arish, Israel, and has dismissed claims. A Turkish ship carrying 871 tons of humanitarian aid for Gaza docked at the Egyptian port city of El Arish. Next item is Israel has dismissed claims by two Hamas officials that it is delaying the delivery of aid to Gaza as totally fake news. Egypt has said the forced displacement of Palestinians on its journey to that of Jordan, as Trump has suggested should be done, would be an act of injustice. The president of the International Committee of the Red Cross, Mirjana Spoljaric, told the UN General Assembly that respect for international humanitarian law is in crisis and threatening the very humanity that these laws seek to preserve, citing the situations in Lebanon, Syria, Israel, Gaza and the West Bank. Al-Qaeda's affiliate group in Syria, Haras al-Din, has announced its dissolution just weeks after the regime of Bashar al-Assad was toppled by Islamist group HTS. Rachel Reeves has confirmed the UK government will throw its weight behind a third runway at Heathrow in an upbeat speech setting out her plans for kick-starting the stalled UK economy. Dismissing doubts about the project's compatibility with the UK's climate commitments, including within government, Reeves said a third runway would make the UK the world's best connected place to do business. Reeves hopes the government will grant planning permission to the project by the end of the Parliament in 2029. The chief executive of Heathrow, Thomas Wolby, told the Financial Times the target was ambitious but not undoable. He said the runway could be completed by the mid-2030s at the earliest. Alongside the Heathrow announcement, the half-hour-long speech set out the clearest explanation Reeves has given of her approach to the economy. The Chancellor listed a range of supply-side policies the government hopes will boost the UK's capacity to grow, from sweeping away environmental regulation to bankrolling transport projects. The Chancellor defended her controversial decision to impose a £25 billion increase in employer national insurance contributions in the October budget. Commenting on the Chancellor's speech, Scotland's Deputy First Minister, Kate Forbes, said, "I welcome the Chancellor's attempt to outline an economic plan after the legitimate concerns around her approach to growth which have been raised by many since the UK budget, in particular the damaging decision to raise employers' national insurance contributions. However, I am deeply disappointed in the lack of any initiatives which would directly benefit Scotland, especially given our energy expertise, strengthen new technologies like space and AI, world-leading universities and colleges, highly skilled workforces, and our reputation as a world-class entrepreneurial nation." She continued, "For instance, there is no mention of Grangemouth, and I am concerned that UK government investment is being further concentrated in prosperous areas in the southeast of England and around Oxford and Cambridge. This will deepen concerns that Scotland is being treated as an afterthought by this UK government." She went on to say, "The Scottish Government is focused on delivering economic growth and jobs. For example, we are committing up to £500 million over 5 years to boost private investment in the offshore wind supply chain by up to £1.5 billion, while this week the First Minister signed an agreement with the City of London Corporation to bolster Scotland's finance sector and secure further investment." The Scottish Greens reacted angrily to the Chancellor's decision to extend Heathrow Airport, with Transport spokesperson Mark Ruskell calling the expansion a disaster for future generations. The SNP responded by saying the Labour government's own policies are the biggest roadblock to economic growth. Dave Duggan MP warned the Chancellor has been taking the economy in the wrong direction and doesn't have a plan for recovery beyond the south of England, with the Labour government cutting £800 million of funding from Edinburgh for the development of an X-scale supercomputer, failing to deliver the £1 billion of carbon capture investment previously promised to Scotland, failing to deliver the previously promised HS2 investment to Scotland, and failing to restore lost EU investment in Scotland's communities. The SNP has described Sir Keir Starmer's comments channeling Margaret Thatcher as tone-deaf, showing a Prime Minister completely out of touch with the people of Scotland. In an article in The Times, Starmer favourably compares himself to Margaret Thatcher, stating, "In the 1980s, the Thatcher government deregulated finance capital, while stating his government plans to further deregulate the financial sector." In Margaret Thatcher's first 2 years in power, Scotland lost 20% of its workforce due to her economic policies, with the impact still being felt today. Commenting, SNP MSP Michelle Thompson said, "Keir Starmer invoking Margaret Thatcher while outlining his plans for deregulation will be deeply unsettling for many in Scotland, and another major embarrassment for Anas Sarwar." She went on to say people across Scotland still remember the devastation Thatcher caused in our industries and our communities. So, for a Labour Prime Minister to make these comments is completely tone-deaf and shows just how out of touch he is with people in Scotland. She went on to say, with Labour support collapsing across the UK, it's clear they are once again prioritising chasing Tory voters and are happy to take voters in communities who suffered under Margaret Thatcher for granted. Child poverty in Scotland is predicted to fall by 2029, according to the Joseph Rowntree Foundation's annual poverty barometer, the only part of the UK where it is predicted to fall. Social Justice Secretary Shirley-Anne Somerville has welcomed the report's highlighting of the progress being made in Scotland, while recommitting to doing everything in the Scottish Government's power to eradicate child poverty entirely. The Joseph Rowntree Foundation has said that child poverty rates are already much higher in England, 30%, and Wales at 29%, compared to Scotland on 24%. And by 2029, the gap between child poverty rates in Scotland compared to England and Wales will have grown, with Scotland moving from being 7 to 10 percentage points below the rest of the UK, which it says is in large part due to Scotland-specific policies. They also point to evidence which suggests that welfare policies, such as the Scottish Child Payment and mitigating the two-child limit from 2026, which boosts the incomes of parents of those who receive them, are behind Scotland bucking the trend of rising child poverty rates elsewhere in the UK. Social Justice Secretary Shirley-Anne Somerville said, "It is very welcome to see that child poverty rates in Scotland are expected to fall in the years ahead, thanks in part to measures like our Scottish Child Payment, but we are clear that no child should live in poverty in a country as prosperous as Scotland." She continued, "This report should act as a wake-up call for the UK government and shows them exactly what they need to do to support our efforts to end child poverty, including abolishing the two-child limit and delivering progress towards an essentials guarantee, which the Scottish Government has repeatedly called on them to do." She went on to say, "The draft Scottish budget for 2025-26 prioritises action to eradicate child poverty, including through investment in breakfast clubs, employability, and by developing the systems to mitigate the two-child limit, with estimates that scrapping the cap could lift around 15,000 children out of poverty." She continued, "The report shows that Scotland is bucking the trend on child poverty rates elsewhere in the UK. However, we are in no doubt that there is still much more to do, and we will leave no stone unturned across government as we seek to eradicate child poverty." Specialist, specialty and associate specialists, or SAS, doctors across Scotland have voted to accept a £7.2 million investment in their pay, ensuring it remains competitive with other UK nations. The pay deal will see uplifts of between 6 and 10%, backdated to the 1st of April 2024. SAS doctors are experienced and qualified medical professionals. They typically work in hospital settings and have chosen not to pursue the formal consultant path, although many have substantial clinical experience. The new pay deal for specialist, associate specialist and specialty doctors means a specialist doctor on the 2022 contract will receive a salary increase of £8,872 in 2024-25. A specialty doctor on pay point 14 will see a rise of £5,441 over the same period. Scottish Government Secretary Neil Gray said, "I am very pleased that specialist, associate specialist and specialty doctors in Scotland have voted to accept the Scottish Government's pay offer. It builds on the contract reform and investment we made in 2022 and ensures that these doctors will stay competitively paid in Scotland." He went on to say, "I am very grateful for the patience of all our SAS doctors and I'm delighted we have been able to work together to achieve this deal." Lloyds Banking Group has revealed plans to shut another 136 branches weeks after a policy allowing customers to do their in-person banking across any of its three brands prompted fears that bosses could close up to a quarter of its high street sites. The move will cut the group's branch network by a further 15%, accelerating a strong shift towards digital and mobile banking that is core to a 5-year strategy being pushed by its chief executive, Charlie Nunn. It will result in a closure of 61 Lloyds branded sites, 61 Halifax locations and 14 Bank of Scotland branches, and leaves the group with 757 branches by spring next year. Lloyds said the closures reflected customer usage across those 136 branches and on-site transactions had tumbled 48% on average and up to 70% in some cases over the past 5 years. A bank spokesperson said there would be no job cuts as part of the closures, with all staff due to be offered a role at another branch or in another part of the business. However, it could result in unsuitable working arrangements, including lengthy commutes, that might leave some staff, particularly those with young families or caring responsibilities, unable to accept alternative roles. The latest series of branch closures has been announced less than a month before the bank presents its annual results on the 20th of February, during which the CEO, Charlie Nunn, is due to give a strategy update as he heads into the final 2 years of his plan. The Bank of Scotland branches to close are in Alexandria, Annan, Barrhead, Bishopbriggs, Edinburgh, Corstorphine West, Edinburgh Wester Hailes, Helensburgh, Kirkintilloch, Moffat, Peebles, Pitlochry, Sanquhar, Thornhill and Uddingston. The German Parliament has narrowly passed a motion urging tough restrictions on immigration that was highly controversial because it was backed by the far-right Alternative für Deutschland party. The motion was brought by the Conservative opposition CDU-CSU and backed by, among others, the AfD, breaking a long-standing taboo on cooperation with the anti-immigration party. MPs passed it in a vote on Wednesday with 348 votes in favour, 345 against and 10 abstentions. Earlier, the Chancellor, Olaf Scholz, warned the opposition it would be an unforgivable mistake to pass the proposals with the help of the far-right AfD. And at least 30 people have been killed and scores injured in a crowd crush at the Kumbh Mela festival, Indian police have confirmed, as vast numbers of people went to bathe at one of the holiest sites of the Hindu gathering. Tens of millions of people flocked to the northern state of Uttar Pradesh to immerse themselves at the sacred confluence of the Ganges and Yamuna rivers on one of the most auspicious days of the Hindu festival. A senior police officer, Vabhav Krishna, told a news conference that 30 people had died and at least double that number were wounded in fatal crushes that took place in the early hours of this morning. It is feared the death toll could be higher than officially confirmed. Earlier, officials on the ground said 39 bodies had been brought to a hospital morgue. According to counts by devotees, several crowd crushes occurred at about 1 a.m. after large numbers of people congregated on the banks where the Yamuna and Ganges River meet in order to take a holy bath in the waters. As the crowd surged in different directions, people began to push their way out and some tried to jump over barriers. Many fell down the river bank in the panic, and families who had been sleeping on the ground nearby were trampled. A number of bodies were seen lying around the banks of the river. Shoes and clothes could be seen strewn on the ground, and there were scenes of desperation at nearby makeshift tent hospitals where the dead and injured were initially brought. More than 400 million people, the biggest crowd in the event's history, were expected to attend this year's Kumbh Mela festivities, held over 45 days in Prayagraj in Uttar Pradesh. A record 100 million people had been expected to attend the festival today alone, to take part in a particularly auspicious bathing day. Speaking to reporters today, the Uttar Pradesh Chief Minister Yogi Adityanath did not acknowledge any fatalities at the festival and said the incident had been triggered when some devotees tried to cross over barricades set up by the police. Several relatives of the victims placed the blame with police, accusing them of failing to properly control the crowds and causing bottlenecks of devotees in certain areas as some main routes and pontoon bridges across the river were blocked for ordinary pilgrims. The Kumbh Mela pilgrimage takes place every 12 years and is widely seen as the festival of festivals in the Hindu religious calendar in India, attended by a vibrant mix of sadhus, ascetics, pilgrims and tourists. This year's celebration is particularly significant as the Maha or Grand Kumbh Mela takes place only every 144 years, marking the 12th Kumbh Mela and a special celestial alignment of the Sun, Moon, Jupiter and Saturn. A new law to bring about an immediate and sustained reduction in the prison population will take effect from the 11th of February. The Prisoners Early Release Scotland Act, passed by the Scottish Parliament in November 2024, will change the release point for those serving prison sentences of less than 4 years from 50% of their sentence to 40%. There will be no change to the release point for prisoners serving sentences for domestic abuse or sexual offences. It is expected this change will bring about a 5% reduction in the sentenced prison population compared to if no change had been made. At the point of commencement, the change will apply to eligible prisoners already serving sentences of less than 4 years and those sentenced from then on. This will mean that an estimated 260 to 390 short-term prisoners who have served 40% of their sentence will be released by the Scottish Prison Service in 3 tranches over 6 weeks. The commencement regulations laid in the Scottish Parliament today, which bring the Act into force, set out this will be done on a tranche. The first tranche will be from the 18th to the 20th of February, the second tranche from the 4th to the 6th of March, and the third and final tranche between the 18th and the 20th of March. The bill does not make any changes to the victim notification schemes. Victims who have already signed up to the Victim Notification Scheme, or the VNS, will be told automatically by the Scottish Prison Service if there is a change to the date of release of the prisoner in their case. Victims who are not signed up to the VNS can also contact the Scottish Prison Service directly to receive information. Victims will also be able to nominate Victim Support Scotland, Rape Crisis Scotland, Assist or Child First to receive information about prisoner release on their behalf. Justice Secretary Angela Constance said, "The prison population has significantly grown in recent years, and I recognise that the impact is being felt in prisons and across the justice system. While not a complete solution, this Act will bring sustained reduction to prisoner numbers so the prison estate can continue to function effectively." She went on to say, "We need the prison system to focus on those who pose the greatest risks to the public and provide a range of support to help reduce reoffending and integration back into the community. That is why this Act is backed by both the Prison Officers Association and the Prisoner Governors Association." People with learning disabilities will be supported to reach their full potential through £1.6 million funding from the Scottish Government. The Learning Disability Support Fund will be available to third sector organisations to enable them to promote equality and inclusion and improve access to health services and social activities for people with learning disabilities. The fund will run for 30 months from October 2025, with a total of £325,000 available for the first year and £650,000 per year for the following 2 years. Excuse me. Organisations can apply for grants and £250,000. Minister for Wellbeing, Social Care and Sport, Mary Todd, said, "The last 30 years have seen enormous changes in how people with learning disabilities and support in society. However, we recognise there is more work to be done." She went on to say, "We know the third sector plays a crucial role in improving the lives of people with learning disabilities, and this fund will support organisations to enable the work forgive me, I'll reread that sentence. She said, "We know the third sector plays a crucial role in improving the lives of people with learning disabilities, and this fund will support organisations to enable those they work with to lead fulfilling, independent and active lives as equal citizens." She went on to say, "The grant will be used to provide people with education and information on matters such as accessing health services and developing safe relationships. In developing the fund, we have taken into account the views expressed by people with learning disabilities in recent consultation and research, and we will work closely with the third sector to ensure it makes a difference." Communities across Scotland will benefit from £9 million of Scottish Government funding for measures to help cut energy costs and support the development of locally owned renewable energy projects. The funding, which builds on the successful Community Energy Generation Growth Fund pilot, will be used to scale up community energy projects across Scotland as part of a drive to cut carbon emissions, create local jobs, reduce energy costs and stimulate local investment. It includes £3.5 million for a new Community Energy Generation Growth Fund to support communities to develop their own renewable energy projects, such as installing wind turbines and solar panels. There's £4.5 million to help local groups decarbonise their buildings through the installation of renewable measures, such as heat pumps and solar PV panels, alongside energy efficiency measures that reduce energy costs and emissions. There's £1 million for capacity building and development support to help develop and progress early ideas for new community energy projects, and announcing the funding at the annual Community and Renewable Energy Scheme, known as CARES, conference in Glasgow. The Acting Climate and Action Minister, Alistair Allen, said, "Communities must be at the heart of our transition to net zero and must see the benefits of this just transition. This transition is about both the outcome, a fairer and greener future, and about the way we get there in partnership with those most likely to be impacted by these changes." He continued, "That is why I am pleased to announce this £9 million investment from the Scottish Government, and it will be available to communities throughout CARES over the next year." He went on to say, "Scotland has diverse communities, from those in our cities to those in rural areas and on our islands. I am committed to supporting all these communities to take part in and benefit from the growth of Scotland's energy sector." And just breaking, Donald Trump has rescinded a memo Donald Trump has rescinded a memo freezing spending on federal grants less than 2 days after he sparked widespread confusion and legal challenges across the country. The order, originally issued by the White House Office of Management and Budget on Monday, sparked uncertainty over a crucial financial lifeline for states, schools and organisations that rely on trillions of dollars from Washington, and left the White House scrambling to explain what and wouldn't be subject to a pause in funding. So that's the latest from America for you. But that's about it for this evening from us here at Scotland at 7. So before we go, again, we're just going to remind you that here at Broadcasting Scotland, we depend on the generosity of you, our supporters. To everyone who has donated and to everyone who has signed up to make a regular monthly payment, we thank you very much. We have raised £20,000 between April to the end of 2024, but that's £16,000 short of our £36,000 target. We borrowed £12,000, which means that we can now pay our bills and survive, but the pressure is still on and we need to find enough regular donors to give us financial security. Our costs are around £4,000 a month, but we receive donations of about £2,500, for which we're grateful, but we need more regular subscribers and we need to clear our debts as well. You know that our programmes will always be free to view. However, if you can afford £5 a month, please do consider becoming a Broadcasting Scotland supporter, or please simply donate whatever you can afford. But as I said, that's it. So thank you for watching, and we'll see you during the rest of the week and Sunday for the full Scottish. So thank you and goodbye.